You're listening to the 95 Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 95 Podcast. This is Dale Sellers, Executive Director of 95 Network. Today, I get to hang out with one of my really big early on friends as far as being part of 95 Network. Aimee, I think I met you and Shayla at the conference at Richwood's Church, and I wasn't even the director yet of 95 Network. I think
That's right.
it came later. I was serving on the board then. And you remember your claim to fame of us getting together then, right? Or am I going to tell it or are you going to tell it?
Is it the t-shirt?
Yes.
That was when we became best friends. You're right.
You're giving away free t-shirts and they're all crooked.
We had all these t-shirts printed, brought them with us in these huge boxes to the conference.
Yeah.
Giving them out. It was like, you didn't tell us till like the second day or something.
Yeah.
Giving them out to all the people, just feeling so great. And then here you come up and you're like, your t-shirt's crooked. And I thought you were joking at first.
Yes,
I was like,
I know you did. Yeah.
No, it was.
Yeah, it was the printing for those listening. The printing was done at an angle. It wasn't a huge angle, but it was enough to where it drove these two ladies crazy. And it was that was the beginning of a long friendship.
It really, really was. Best way to start a friendship.
So I've known you guys really, ever since then, and we've worked together. You've actually come to South Carolina with me to work at the church or help me do it. We did a conference at the church I used to work at, and then I always like to check in with you. You guys always have great cutting edge ideas to help churches, specifically in a little bit. We'll talk about some ideas about Easter and how to really do a good job of helping to meet people, cater to people, reach people, all those things. So what's going to happen on this podcast as you listen is Aimee's going to tell you everything you need to know to help your church grow by 1,000 this Easter. Thank you, Aimee.
Is that the promise? Oh man, I might need to rework my notes.
No, I say that because there's just, I get tickled. It's not as bad as it used to be, but you used to see books or come to this conference and we'll grow your church by 3,000 in 3 months. And I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen. But you guys do have a lot of great practical stuff. And the thing I love about Fishhook is you guys love the church and you stand there with the church. But before we dive into all that, let's tell Aimee's story. Let everybody know who Aimee is in case they have not heard you on previous podcasts.
All right. Well, thanks, Dale. I'm excited to be here. So I'm Aimee Cottle. I'm an account director at Fishhook. I have technically been part of the Fishhook team for two stints. So I was on the Fishhook team leading there for over 9 years. And in the past 2 years, I kind of took what I've been calling a little sabbatical. And I'm back now as an account director. So I have worn a lot of hats during my time at Fishhook. I was creative director, I was marketing director, did digital strategy, and now I'm an account director. So I kind of get to do a little bit of everything. So that's
cool.
me.
Well, what is Fishhook? I didn't think about that, but maybe people listening who don't know what are they talking about at Fishhook?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. We should probably start there. So Fishhook is a creative communications agency. We do everything that a typical creative agency does, except that our calling is to partner with the local church and a handful of faith-based nonprofits. Our goal really is to encourage and equip church leaders. And so we want to help you get your message out, understand who you are, understand who you're reaching so that you can reach people for Jesus. And we just happen to do that through communications and marketing. So that's
Well, you
us.
do a super good job too. You guys, you have always done excellent. And again, because I've worked with you for so long, I just love your passion for the church. And honestly, you offer a lot of things that I think churches are more aware now than they were 5 years, certainly more than 10 years ago, but you offer a lot of things to help churches just to connect with people because you can't just put, I just rode by one of these yesterday on the church sign said, we'd love to have you come visit us. And that's their outreach, and
Yep.
they're probably not going to get a lot of folks with that.
Yep.
So,
That's
so
right.
how big a team does Fishhook have?
Yeah, so I think we're at 10 right now. And we have a mix of designers, web programmers, strategists, digital focused people. We have a whole web team. That's what we call it.
Digi
Um,
Web team. I like that.
yeah. And then of course our fearless leaders, Shayla and Leah, who have been leading for a really long time. Leah's coming up on her 20th anniversary with Fishhook. So yeah, that's a little bit of our makeup.
Well, I want to talk specifically today about ways that churches can um, really leverage Easter this year and do that. Before we do, you've only been back for a little bit now, but you would know the overall vibe. What are you seeing as far as churches, the atmosphere of churches, at least the ones you're working with right now? Are they discouraged? Are they encouraged? Are they still trying to figure out where they are after the pandemic? What's the overall vibe you guys are running into as you work with churches?
Mhm. Well, I think it's both and. I think church leaders are tired still coming out of the pandemic and learning how to operate in this new world. I think where our world is right now is just it's in a hard spot. And so there is a lot of ministry to be done. Um, and as we know, a lot of people are leaving the ministry. And so the people that are there, they feel that.
Mhm.
But on the other side of that too, when we talk to church leaders, there is a hope. Like
Yeah.
there is a passion. They are dedicated to this work and to their callings. And so it's both. It's like acknowledging, yeah, we are in a hard season right now, as the church as a whole.
Mhm.
But also, man, is there potential and
Yeah.
possibility there? So I would say what we're seeing is church leaders really trying to hold both of those things.
What do you say to a pastor who knows they want to embrace more of, you just to make it very simple, using the internet to reach people or,
Yeah.
out in social media, whatever it is, but they just don't have a clue of what to do. But we know if we're going to reach young families, we got to be able to figure this out. Where should they begin?
Yep. Well, I love this question because
Mm.
I love all things digital. Um, I always say set the tool down because the tools are going to change and they have rapidly. I mean, even the tool.
Explain what tools are even.
Yeah. So when we're talking about digital tools, social
Mhm.
media, even your website,
Mhm.
even if you think of a specific social platform, like let's think about Facebook, right? The way that we were using Facebook 5, 10 years ago is completely different than how we're using it
Okay.
today.
Mhm.
So the tool is going to continue to shift and change. So I always like to encourage them of like, take a second, set your idea of whatever the tool is down
Mhm.
and step back and just say, how are we hoping to equip people? What is the message that we are hoping to share? Who are these people that we're hoping to reach? And then when you pick back up the tool and you're like, okay, now we actually need to come up with a social media strategy,
Mhm.
you have this foundational place to start from. And so you're not just trying to throw things out on social media like, oh, well, I saw this cool video that did really well for some random car wash in my neighborhood. Well, maybe it'll work for you. Maybe you can use pieces of that to connect with people in your community. But if you don't have that foundational thing of like, who are we even trying to reach and what are we even trying to share with them, then what you do on the tool really isn't going to matter. And so a lot of times when we help church leaders kind of step back, because yeah, of course, Instagram is hard. It is hard to figure out how to use that. It is changing every day. We
Mhm.
have this discussion even at Fishhook for our marketing. Like, how are we going to keep using this tool to reach church leaders? But when we step back and we say, but what are we trying to do just in general as a ministry? Now, how can we use this specific tool, whatever it is, to help us get there?
You just basically did what we do. And what I mean by that is we have lots of offerings of ways to help churches and help leaders here at 95 Network. But at the end of the day, if you don't know your mission and what we say
Yep,
your mission is why you exist. If you
yep,
don't know your mission, nothing else matters because
yep,
it doesn't matter if you have a strategy or a program or if you don't understand what the end game is, if I can word it that way, or understand what are you trying to accomplish, and then have ways to measure how are you doing, not so you can compete with the church down the road, but so you
No.
can be practically understanding this is working or this isn't working. And the sad thing you said was all this stuff's changing so fast now. It's like our poor pastors, they learn how to do something, they finally take on something, and then it's obsolete. And so it's very hard to do this in a ever-changing world, but we have to do it if we're going to reach people, is what I'm hearing you say.
And can I give one more piece of encouragement?
Yes.
Communications tools do change rapidly, but I genuinely believe that your best communications and outreach tool is your current congregation. It is the people that are coming on Sunday, it is your volunteers. And so that your relationship with them, you equipping them to
Mhm.
go out and help reach people that they know, that is the best communication strategy you can have. And so I like to use social media. Yeah, you're gonna post ads. You're gonna try to get people to your events. You're gonna do marketing. But how can you use it to help your people, the people that are already following you? How can you equip them to share it to their networks? Like
Mhm.
that. And that stuff is a little bit more evergreen because yes, maybe how you're packaging it, like the graphic you make or the video you create or what you're saying, maybe that will change slightly, but the system is still the same. We're equipping our people to share the love and hope of Jesus. We're equipping our people to invite. And so
You made me think of something. So this is probably before you were even born. But I used to work at a church, and I would do events and that kind of thing. Events were huge in the 80s. And so, we would do an illustrated sermon drama type thing every year, but we also did concerts and things. And I'd always print our church probably ran about 600 folks back then. And I would print 2,000 tickets, free tickets, just
mhm.
free tickets. And I would package them in groups of 10, and I would give them to our people just to hand out, to give them a point of contact to tell someone about our event, because word of mouth has always been the best promotion. And
Yeah,
it's still the best promotion, is what I hear you saying. And that's how we always had very successful events and reached new people, was I put things in the hands of our people, that just to make it, because most people are introverts. Most
yeah,
people
yeah,
have a hard time inviting, especially a stranger. You're
yeah.
not just, if you're introverted, you're not going to walk up to a stranger and invite them to church. And so
No.
I kind of hear you saying this. It's really still, it's kind of the same way, that point of contact.
Yeah, and it's even more simple now because especially for people that don't feel comfortable walking up like, "Oh, I have a coworker I would really love to invite, but I don't really know what to say. I don't want to walk up. I'm going to be awkward."
Hmm.
Well, what if you had some sort of social post that you said, "Hey, we're gonna post this. It's gonna maybe it's a direct invitation, maybe it's not, and we're gonna get into that. Like maybe it's more of a value-based post, but we want you to share it with your networks. And here's a little snippet of content you can post. Hey, my church is hosting this Easter event or service. I'm going. We would love for you to come with us if you've been curious about it. Feel free to DM me if you have questions." That's the lowest barrier point of
Yes.
evangelism. Like I'm
Yes.
typing on a computer. I don't even have to say anything with my mouth. I don't have
Mhm.
to be face to people. But our churches need to equip and encourage their audiences to do that.
Okay, let's segue there then into
Yeah.
helping us to get ready for Easter.
Yeah.
What are the steps? What are the first steps
Well, we already kind of talked about it. You want to start with your goals, your mission,
for
your
this
audience.
for this Easter?
That's right, for this
Okay.
Easter.
Okay.
So we talk about mission, audience, and messaging.
Mhm.
Ma'am, I guess, if you will need an acronym.
I'm gonna
So
write that down, ma'am.
ma'am, really, you want to ask yourself, what does it look like to live out our mission during this Easter season? So you hopefully, like you said, have a mission that you feel great about. Now, what does it look like for us to live this out? How are we going to know if we're successful? And I would like to kind of go back to something you said earlier about, growing our congregation by X amount of people.
Yeah.
Maybe that is your success metric. But what I want to encourage, I think we get so bogged down sometimes as church leaders of comparing ourselves to the church down the street
Hmm.
and also only measuring success by new. people that come to our Easter service.
Yep.
Now, ultimately, yes, we want to get new people to Easter. This is a prime opportunity to help them connect with your church. Absolutely measure it by that. But we have to always remember, I mean, at Fishhook, we say never upstage the resurrection. Like, we're not just trying to get people into our churches, we're trying
Hmm.
to get people to Jesus.
Yes.
And so, how can we figure out how to measure that? And maybe it's physical people in a space. That's great. But maybe you find other ways that you're saying, hey, we're living out our mission in this way during the Easter season, and that's how we're going to know we're successful. But that's where you want to start. That's your baseline.
Yep.
And then you need to go to audience. And I've really been thinking a lot about the ideas of internal and external audiences. Now, a lot of times with church leaders, anytime we start talking about audiences, they, kind of get a little stiff because, yes, the message of Jesus is for everyone.
Hmm.
But we really believe that every church is distinct and they were created at a specific time in a
Yep.
specific place for specific kinds of people who need their kind of church. The church I go to is not at all like the church that Leah goes to, and that's great.
Yep.
And that's why we have different expressions. So when you're thinking about audiences, if you take a minute to separate them out of like, okay, who are our current people? How do we want to communicate to them? How do we want to equip them to invite? But then let's spend some time thinking about who is in our community. Who are those people that our congregation members will be inviting? Who are the people we're hoping walk through that door? Um, Separating them out, I think, is helpful because I feel like it's so easy to put blinders on and just think about Easter in the context of the current people that are there. But really, we need to back up and say, wow, we're trying to reach new people with the love and hope of Jesus. Who are those people? And so
Well,
defining that is
something I
important.
like about this is you're talking. I'm seeing that because most of us view everything out there as this big mass of just
Yeah.
stuff, and you're
Yep.
actually saying let's put a face with that. Let's put a
Yes.
face with who we're trying to reach because you
Yes.
can't. At 95 Network, our measure for all churches is health first. We want you to be healthy. And I do a thing called Vision Day where I go to individual churches and work, and we talk about who's your primary demographic you're trying to reach. Not that we're being exclusive of anyone, but it determines how you do ministry. If specifically a demographic you're going for, it puts a face with it instead of just a big blob out there. And so I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying is that we need to put a face with who we're trying to reach.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to sit with church leaders. And just last week, I was talking with a pastor. And I said, like, I had not met him before. I said, hey, tell me about your church. And immediately he started talking about his community, which I thought was so beautiful. But
Yeah.
the picture that he painted was like, this is a small town. This is a coffee shop on the corner. This is people walking to school. This is very rural. This is lots of farmers. This is people that are working with their hands. That audience, you're going to reach them. You're going to use different words and pictures and ideas and messaging to reach them versus another church that we work with that said, our people are at the bar until 12, 1, 2 a.m. They're coming in all tatted up,
Mhm.
but they're here just as much as anyone else. Those are very different audiences, right? Then you have
Absolutely.
suburban moms. You have like these are very different kinds of people. We can't expect to communicate them to them all in the same way. So that's why we want to start with that.
Yeah, because you can't just the descriptions you just gave. That would be impossible to do one message. You can't just
Yeah.
message one message to reach those various different people, as you said. So how do you pick which message then?
Yeah. So once you have your vision, your mission for this season, once you know who you're talking to, then the question is, all right, what is the top thing that we want people to know and believe this Easter? That is the question. I think messaging it's hard because especially around like Easter or Christmas, these big holiday seasons, a lot of times we see like, come to Easter at XYZ church. Well, maybe that's okay. But there are so many different aspects of the Easter story that you could lean into. One
Hmm.
time we worked with a church, their whole series was on the awe of Easter. And they did so much content around helping people pause and experience the wonder, the magic of the Easter season. And it was beautiful. But you could also do a million other things. I mean, the Easter story is packed full, right? The hope of Easter, the love of Easter, the friendships of Easter. I mean, there's so many different aspects of it. So really what we want to do is, hey, what is the top thing that you want someone to know and believe this Easter? And if you decide that the top thing is, we just want people to know that in this world, there is a lot of pain, there is a lot of hard things happening, but there is joy available to you. There is joy, or there is hope, or whatever that message is.
Mhm.
And that becomes the foundation of everything else you do. And you can build a full communication strategy around that one thing. And that's going to get you 12 steps down the road further than if you just said, okay, well, we want people to come to our Easter service. And then you built your communication strategy around that. Like building around the feeling, building around the belief, that is so much more powerful.
So you're saying highlight one aspect of Easter instead of trying to cover the whole service and the whole impact of Easter in one service. Hey, that's
Well,
good
yeah.
advice.
I mean, if even if you want to cover the whole impact of Easter in your service, when you're inviting people into something, they need to know what you're inviting them into. And
Hmm.
just Easter, if you're trying to reach an outside audience, just general Easter is
Hmm.
too broad because people are going to define that in their own way. So you need to help them define it, how they're going to experience it. Like what are they going to experience when they come in? Like at my church, I go to a super small church. It's made up of like 30% people that I'm related to. And what we love about it is that familial aspect. And so I think when people show up for Easter at our church, like they are going to feel that family energy. And I think there's so much that you could do with that within the Easter story. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But that's very different than someone coming and feeling like the energy, the possibility, the spark, the whatever of Easter. So, I like starting with that for messaging. And then you can really craft something that feels distinct to your audience and your mission.
Cool. Let's do this. Let's take a short break, and I want to come back and ask you a question about how we present that. So, a short break. We'll be right back with Aimee. Back here with Aimee talking all things Easter. And here's the question I have for you, Aimee. One of the things that when I pastored and then I've been on other church staffs that we did always is we always planned this crazy huge non-normal event at Easter. I mean, what I mean by that was, we just if you came to our Easter service, it was like this major production almost.
Yeah,
But it
you go all
wasn't
out.
it wasn't the normal flow of ministry. And what I've heard and learned over the years, it's better to just be in a series that builds up to Easter and not be so unrecognizable in what you do that when if
Yep.
people come back the next week they think they're at the wrong place. Have you guys do you address that?
Yeah. I will say that is something that I have noticed this Easter is that I do feel like more churches are doing that. They're in a series, they kind of build up to Easter. Now, what I will say is that you want to make sure that you create space. I mean, the Easter story is what it's all about, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
this is what we build everything that we believe and know to be true on.
Yep.
And so we want to create space around that. We want it to feel a little special because it is super special. So we don't want it to feel kind of like mundane where people are like, all right, especially when you're talking about reaching outside audiences. All right, I geared up. I got my family up. I got everyone dressed. I'm here. And now it's like, oh, this is it? So you want it to feel a little special. That doesn't have to mean flashing lights and smoke,
Hmm.
but you just want people to feel that awe, that reverence, that possibility when they come in, whatever that looks like in your context. But
Okay.
yeah, we have seen a lot more churches kind of building up and doing it in the context of a larger series.
Okay, cool. All right, so walk us through as we are heading toward Easter. What do we need to be doing as far as planning goes?
Yeah. So once you have this kind of foundational, your
Your ma'am.
mission, audience, your message. I've never called it the ma'am before, but now I'm going to.
That's the kind of
Uh,
pacifier we give our kids, so I'll never forget that.
The man's, that's
Yes.
right. Once you have that, now you can build off of that.
Okay.
And so what we like to do is we like to think of what is keep your communication plan simple. You do not have to be on every single platform. You don't have to be doing every single thing you could possibly do. You want to go back to your audience and say, all right, who's our internal and who's our external audience? What tools would reach them most efficiently? And so for internal audiences, we're probably talking about email. Maybe you have a texting service that you want to use.
Mhm.
It's going to be a lot of in-person stuff with them. It's going to be handing out the cards that they can give to people. It's going to be word of mouth encouragement from stage. Hey, we're going into Easter season. Here's how we want you to invite people. Here's what you're inviting them to. Kind of cast that vision of that. What is that one thing that we want people to know or believe this Easter?
Mhm.
Cast that vision. And then externally, you want to think of the 2 to 3 communication tools that you want to use. So you're probably going to update your website. Maybe if especially as we're thinking of small and mid-sized churches, the pastor is doing a lot of it. So
Yeah.
think about what you're capable of. Like, do you love to write? Maybe write a few blog posts that you can then publish out on social media. Do you love to jump on a video and talk? Do that. Keep
Yeah.
it low production and high authenticity. Whatever you're doing, like help it come across as very true and very organic. That's number one. So you're going to keep your plan simple.
Mhm.
Focus on the tools that are going to reach your internal and external audiences the best. And then this is something we're really passionate about, especially for small and mid-sized churches, is use templates and other tools, other resources that you have at your disposal. And so that's going to look like lots of Canva and AI. How can you use ChatGPT to help you craft a communications plan, to help you craft some messaging so that as a pastor, you can be doing the ministry aspect of it and not spend all of your time on that. And I know there's a lot of different feelings about using ChatGPT or AI.
Mhm.
We're passionate about it because it is a great starting place. It's not going to get you all the way there.
People are beginning to warm up to and understand. It's kind of like when the internet came out. Churches
Yeah,
kind of came into it slowly because people can watch porn on the online. Well, of course they
right.
can, but they also can
Sure.
hear that somebody preach the gospel. And so it's churches, and I see that kind of happening with AI. I think AI actually is maybe taking root even quicker though.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely has.
Yeah.
And here's where you can start. Go to ChatGPT. Once you have your vision, your audience, and your messaging, type that into ChatGPT. Say, help me put together an Easter communications plan starting now through April 19th or April 20th, depending on when your services are. I want to focus on my core tools are Instagram, blogging, and video content. My audience is this. My key message is this, and give me, 3 to 5 communication touch points every week between now and April 20th. Write me a communications plan, and it's going to spit it out, and it's going to be pretty dang good. Now, what you're going to need to be able to do is then go through it and discern what of
Yes.
this feels natural, good, organic, aligns with our mission and what we're trying to do, and what of this feels overly produced and fake, right?
Yeah.
Because it's AI.
Yeah.
So we don't want to just be copying and pasting everything that Chat GPT spits out at us, but especially when you're talking about plan writing, like
Mm.
just help me know, when do I post on Instagram? How many blog posts do I write? When do I need to send an email? Like to who in my audiences? When you've done the foundational work, use the tools to help you put together a little bit of a structure so you're not spending hours and hours on that.
Yeah, because you've got to be focused on getting ready for your service and still doing all your other things. That's why I think
Right.
AI especially with things like this. We're not saying use AI to preach your message,
Nope,
but you
nope.
can use it to help you reach people, and that's
Yep.
and at the end of the day, that's what we're about. So what's the
And
next
if
step?
you write, so yeah, and let me talk about Canva really quickly. So we're super passionate about the visual side of communications
Hmm.
because that is what brings people into the feeling. When we go back to that core messaging of what's the top thing we want someone to know or believe this Easter season, the visual aspect of it is really important. There's a lot of templates out on Canva. If you are on your own, no designer, and you're kind of just like figuring it out, keep it as simple as possible. We don't want the design to distract. We want it to add to that overall messaging we're trying to bring people in on. And try to keep it consistent. So once you decide on some sort of format, whether that's color or typography or some different patterns or shapes or images, like keep that consistent throughout so that people know that when they see something show up in the wild of the communications
Yes.
and marketing,
Hmm.
like they know it's your church. But utilize those tools. It's fine. It's good. That is what they are there for. Um, so yeah, once you have all the pieces, so now we have our foundation, now we have our plan, hopefully.
Hmm.
Then it's really about executing the plan. So you again want to use the resources you have, schedule your social media posts ahead. If you can block off an hour or two, in February, end of February, to schedule those social media posts out, go ahead and do that. Write them out, schedule them out, get them out of your thoughts so that you can go focus on the ministry. And when we're talking about communications, we don't want to just invite people, right? This is something we
Yep.
talk about a lot at Fishhook. It really is about balancing value and invitation. So you know what you want people to feel and believe and know now, because we've talked about it. You know who your people are. So bring them some value on the tools. Bring them something other than just, hey, come in 6 weeks, come to our church, and then we'll give you some value. Show them, give them a taste of what they're going to experience.
Can you give them an example?
Yeah. I mean, what we're doing at Fishhook, we're about to go into a series, even ourselves for Easter, and we're giving pastors and church leaders a whole like devotional series. We're gonna give them some journaling prompts of like, hey, this Easter, like, here are some journaling prompts that you can use as a church leader to really help yourself carve out time to experience the fullness and beauty of the Easter season, even though it's busy. Because we have, we know our audience, we know where their heads are.
Yeah.
So think about stuff like that. If you're doing a series on, to use the example before, the awe of Easter,
Mhm.
help people experience that awe right where they are in the middle of March before it's even Easter. They're in the car, they're, doing the carpool with their kids, they're waiting in lines. Like, give them a chance to experience that awe. It could be a short devotion, it could be a short video. It could literally just be an encouragement and say, hey, we know this is a busy season for everyone, and we want you to know that there is joy available to you. Take a minute, take a breath, like any sort of things like that. Um,
So you're just coming out with messages that meet people where they are, not
yep.
necessarily invites to our church or a promotion of the event itself. Just literally, which is what I mean. Everything you're saying. So when we do our blueprint conference, we talk about helping churches structure. One of the things I talk about and I still believe this, and I challenge pastors to do it. Although I know they won't, but I wish they'd take a day a week to spend just on online content and
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
So they all look at me and I'm going, okay, I know you're not going to do that. Will you spend half a day? Because
Yeah.
that it's just so easy to connect with new people through these tools. But what we talk about is exactly what you said. You gotta talk about things, felt needs. What are people going
Mhm.
through? We just finished a political season. Just whatever it may be that's happening in the world. But we're not talking to the podcast today is not about just ways that you can invite people to your church for Easter. It's more than that.
No, no, it is because the reality is you don't just want them to come to your church for Easter. I mean, we
No.
have seen a ton of churches who have gotten a lot of people to come on Easter, and then those people they don't stay connected.
Mm-mm.
They come back on Christmas, maybe. But it's really about inviting people into your community as a whole. It's about relationships. I mean, if you think about it, it's like every time you're extending an invitation to someone to Easter or sending out a value-based message, like you are starting, hopefully, a relationship with someone new in your community. And so maybe, especially when you're talking about, pastors needing to carve out space to create this content, Sometimes I like to think about it as, all right, if you know your audience, think about a person that would be part of that. So like let's say your audience is I'll use me as an example. Suburban moms, right?
Mm.
I'm a mom. I have three young boys. I live in the suburbs of Indianapolis. Like you can kind of probably make a list of the stressors, the pain points that I have currently in this season of my life.
Waking up every day.
Right? Right. Right. Making sure I have enough coffee. Even that though is like, okay, if your audience is tired moms, send out some Starbucks gift cards. Like open
Ooh.
up go to the coffee shop next door and sit there and send out put little encouraging messages on the tables. Like there's so much we can do. But what I like to think about is, okay, instead of thinking about like what am I going to post on social media? Think about if someone from your audience walked into your church tomorrow and sat down in your office and said, I am just so fill in the blank, whatever my pain point is. I am just so tired. I cannot keep all the plates spinning.
Hmm.
What would you say to them? How would you encourage them in that moment, person to person? It's Easter season. We have this hope. We have this joy. We have this expectation that it is our job as Christians to share, and especially as church leaders and people in ministry. If someone is sitting right in front of you, how would you share that with them? What would you encourage them with? Take that and then create the content. Write a post. Again, use chat GPT. Write out stream of consciousness what you're thinking. Well, I would say, Aimee, blah, 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 blah. And then I would give her these tips. And then I might tell her to do this. And I might point to this scripture. Write it out and say, hey, chat GPT, create 5 social media posts for me from this. And they'll do it. Or write a blog post for me from this and it will do it. And so again, putting real humans at the center of your communication is the
That's
key.
exactly what I was sitting there thinking. If we could just, especially when it comes to ministry and online, and if we could just get past the masses and find
Yeah.
the individual, it
Yeah.
would change how we communicate.
Yeah. Well, it's like you're going after the one, right? You're doing for the
Yes.
one what you wish you could do for the many. And
Yes.
you're actually by doing that, doing it for the many. So it
Yes.
really works out well.
How about that?
How about
So,
that?
so what else do we need to do?
Well, I would just say, once you have created your value-based content, you do want to get into the invitational portion. Again, when one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is when I just see a church say like, come to Easter at XYZ church.
Hmm.
Why? Why would I pick that church versus, I mean, especially where I live. Now, in some communities, this is not the case. But where I live, there is a church on every corner.
Same thing here.
If I am not a churchgoer, I don't have a home church. How am I going to know which one is for me and my family and is going to help me connect to an actual community of people? So again, when we're invite them into something, invite
Yeah.
them into the story that we have, the Easter story, not just into the doors of your church.
Hmm.
Make sure that they know what to expect when they get there. When we're inviting people to especially a big service like Easter, there is a lot of fear associated with that when you haven't stepped into a church, or if you're kind of hopping around, you don't really have a place that you're settled in. Help them understand what to expect. Hey, and especially at our small churches, like I think it would be so beautiful. I don't know if I've ever seen a church do this. But if they were like, hey, you know what? When you come here, you're going to come in door 5. You're going to be greeted by Dale. He'll point you to the coffee. He'll help you find a seat. Like small and mid-sized churches, you can be so personal.
They can move on a dime. That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, we know it can be scary. Like, just talk to them like they're real people. We know it can be hard to get your kids ready for church. We promise when you get here, we're going to help you get those kids to a safe, fun place. And we're going to get you a seat and a cup of coffee or a donut. We'll help you meet a friend if you want. And if you don't, we'll help you find a seat in the back. Like,
I'm ready to come to your church right now.
please do.
Yeah, that
Um,
was that. I mean, that was just it's just being personable. It's being real. And
yeah.
so one of the things I do want you to address before we run out of time, and I don't know how much other things you have to cover, but one of the things I think is very important is that we need to make sure that whatever we say in our promotion that we are going to do, that we actually do.
Yes. Yes.
I've seen a lot of really, it's just like, We have, I work with lots of churches, and it's like we have the greatest website you've ever seen, and they don't. It's
Yeah.
like, or either the website says, "Come to our church. We have all this stuff," and they have a really first class website, and you get to
Yeah.
the church, and it's not that. Kind of speak to that.
Well, you have to be who you are. Again, if we want to build it on real foundational relationships,
Yeah.
right? If I meet you and I say like, well, my name's Amy and I paint myself this picture of, oh, I got this thing, I'm doing this thing, I'm amazing. And then you realize like, well, it's not really all that great. Like you're going to lose trust with me
And a
immediately.
heart, and that's why I brought that up. It's because
Yeah.
of the
And
trust factor.
so what we're trying to do is we're trying to build trust. It is better to just be yourself. Again, there are people out there that are looking for exactly what your church offers.
Hmm.
And I think
Hmm.
sometimes, especially as church leaders of smaller churches, I think we forget that sometimes is we assume that everyone wants the big flashy thing. And some people do. That's what they're looking for. That's what they need to connect
Hmm.
with the spirit. But there are tons of people that are looking for exactly what you offer. So help them see what that is. Um, because of the tools that we talked about, we have access to a lot of things.
Hmm.
Don't make your Easter service look like it's going to be this big, flashy smokes and lights and screens and all the things. If when I walk in, it's going to be hymns and
Hmm.
it's going to be an organ and it's going to, you know what, and people are going to be dressed up very fancy. Like, don't make me think I'm going to a t-shirt church if
Yeah.
people are going to be in heels and tuxes. So help me understand what I'm choosing to go
And
to.
don't be ashamed of who you are.
No,
Yeah.
own that. Own
Yeah.
that. Because just like every person is unique, every church is unique, and that is good and beautiful. We need that now more than ever. Like we
Hmm.
need homes for all kinds of people, and you have one. So open it up, let people know what they're coming into, invite them into something distinct and special, and just see then how God moves. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about messaging, we're talking about communications, we're talking about how to get people there. I mean, ultimately, the message is already written, right? Like we
Yeah.
have the message.
Yeah.
It is just our job to figure out how to share it with the right people in the right way at the right time. And that can be a lot of pressure, but also I hope that people feel freedom right now. If like the message is already there, the hope is already
Hmm.
there, Jesus has already died and he has already risen. And I just have the opportunity to invite people into that. And that's all I'm doing. So I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. And then I'm going to give God the rest. And maybe that's not great communications advice, but that's the best advice I can
Well,
give.
but it's simple. See, the thing I wanted to do today, and I think you've done a masterful job of this, is I wanted to simplify it. I want to simplify the communications. Don't try to portray something that you're not. Be comfortable in who you are. Quit comparing yourself to everybody else because there is this massive move happening in the next generations for authenticity. They're looking
Yeah.
for real, and and you've mentioned a couple times, the flashy church stuff. That stuff's fine. We're not putting that
Yep.
down, but you
Nope.
don't have to have that anymore to reach people. And
No.
then if you would just spend a little time learning how to use these online tools, if you just begin to understand this is a way to connect with people who are far from God, who
Yep.
they may not ever set foot in your church, and you
Yep.
still have a chance to reach them. And so, I keep thinking, man, everybody on the podcast would like to have you at their church. Wouldn't it be great to have Amy there helping us out? So, do you guys have this? Is this written down? Is there a resource that you guys have created? Tell me about that before we run out of time.
Yeah. So two things. One, when are you thinking this will air? Do we know?
In early March.
Okay. So by March, we will have a whole we're doing like an online and in-person table event, which is for church communicators to help
Okay.
prep for Easter. So
Okay.
by early March, we will have a ton of resources, new resources on our website. So if you go to fishhook.us/learn, there are Easter resources there already. We're gonna refresh them as we kind of go through this Easter season.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I would just encourage fishhook.us/learn.
Okay. And
And
that's
then
where all the
search
thing
it.
is. Hmm.
Yep, search it up. Easter will be there. We have a planning worksheet that kind of talks through the structure that I used already. We also have a a retrospective worksheet that helps you on the back end celebrate. I think a lot of times we do
Yeah.
all of this work for Easter and then we take a deep breath, which you absolutely should, but then we don't look back and say like, well, okay, what worked? What did we do well?
Hmm.
Where did we see wins? Where did we see God move? And so we have this retrospective worksheet that can help with that, as well as a few other resources.
So, but all that's in that one spot on the website.
Yep, fishhook.us/learn.
I'll have that in the show notes. I'm also going to give your email in case anybody wants to reach out
Yep.
to you and just get directions for what to do. So today,
Yep.
as we wrap the podcast, I want you to answer this question. You're talking to a pastor today of a church, small
Mhm.
church specifically, and they're just overwhelmed. They
Mhm.
want to do a good job. They hear us talk about this stuff. They don't know much about it. Um, but they really want to make an impact in their community, and they're discouraged. What would you tell them?
Mhm. I would say God has chosen you to lead your specific church in this specific moment. And again, there can be pressure within that, but what I hope that they feel is freedom to live into that calling. And so all God is asking you to do is show up as your true and best self and to communicate the hope and the joy and the love that we have in Jesus to the people that are around you. And I believe that you have everything you need to be able to do that, whether you know how to use Instagram or TikTok or Chat GPT or not, you
Hmm.
have everything you need to be able to do that. So lean into who you are, lean into who Jesus is, lean into who the people are that are in your community that you are called to minister to and do your best and then give the rest to God.
I absolutely always love talking to you.
I love talking to you.
I,
This is
I
fun.
I get so inspired at what's possible. And again, you know, you guys exist for the same reason we do, and that's to help churches and help pastors.
Yep.
And so we, you know, and Easter is a built-in time in the culture that people will be open to hearing the gospel. And so we're asking this year that God would give all of you just great harvest of people, that you'd reach new people, that you know you don't make it about just the numbers of people who are attending, but about the health of your church. And so again, if you need any help, advice, coaching, Amy's your person. Thanks
Thanks,
so
Dale.
much.
It was
Thank
fun.
you so much for being here today.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.